Dr. Sharp, Mr. Wiles, please report to the office. Now!
Welcome to another edition of From the Principal's Desk with Mr. Dennis Wiles and Dr. Chris Sharp.
Welcome back, everybody, to our third episode of From the Principal's Desk. Dennis, it's good to see you again, buddy. Hope everybody's healthy at your house. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Sharp. Everybody's doing fine. You know, we're healthy and blessed, and we're just trying to get through this like everybody else.
I'm telling you, this is new for all educators. We've never faced anything like this. It's been a tough time. A lot of people are stressing. Hopefully, our show can be a little uh, uh, vacation from the stress and maybe a little professional development to go with it. So, Dennis, you and I talked earlier. We're going to talk about moving on in our series, establishing expectations.
Yeah, man. Once again, it goes back to that temperature check. You know, I was a new administrator in the building, and I sit down and I talk to people from different areas of the building, different stakeholders, and you know, one of the things they identified was, you know, we don't know what's expected of us. We don't know we've never been given clear expectations, and that hit me hard. I was like, well, how can you expect to know? You know, how do you know what you're going to do if you don't know what's expected of you?
Sure.
So I just sit down and started thinking about, you know, how can I clearly communicate what I expect from each and every person in this building? Because, you know, that's the job of any leader. You know, it's a leader's job to communicate clear expectations. You know, if you don't, then how can you hold people accountable in your building?
Sure. And that can be tough at times because I look at my teachers as professionals and as do you, and I kind of expect my teachers to know what's expected, but for a lot of people, if you don't spell it out for them, they're not going to know. And I fall short on that sometimes because I I assume, and you know, there's an old saying about that. We won't say it, but there is an old saying about assuming.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing that I thought about when I really sit down and put some thought into this about, okay, what are my expectations for everybody in this building? Because people have different jobs, and different duties. And so it's hard to just sit down and write up a list of expectations. Here's what I expect everybody to do. You know, because, you know,
Mhm.
pre-K is a different animal than fifth grade. Fifth grade's a different animal than special education and, you know, cafeteria and bus, you know, bus routes and things like that. So I wanted to develop clear expectations for every facet of school, you know, here at Camp Creek Elementary School. I wanted to come up with some kind of model that would help me clearly communicate my expectations to every employee, whether it be
How
certified or
did you go
classified.
about establishing that? Was that, I mean, I know you've had your temperature checks. Are you using your leadership team to kind of develop those? Or, how did you develop that model?
Well, I brought them into it later, but I just sit down. This is one of those things that I didn't just jump right into.
Hmm.
You know, I took several weeks, you know, maybe a month. I did some research and I just thought about it. At the time, I was reading a book by Urban Meyer called Above the Line. You know, we all know Urban Meyer is, you know, a college football coach. Um, and you know, when I was reading the book, you know, it just talked about his success at Utah, Florida, Ohio State. And here's the deal: I didn't choose the book because he was a football coach. You know, to be honest, you know, I'm a diehard UT fan.
Right.
Uh, but I read the book because, you know, of his success at different levels and different programs. And when he went to Ohio State, he implemented the above the line concept. And when I was reading it, I just directly related it to school. And it took me right back to Jocko Willink and Leif Babin's advice to keep it simple, you know, and
Hmm.
the above the line concept is super simple and it's easy to tie into, you know, to school, to business, to any kind of structure where you're wanting to clearly communicate expectations. It's so simple, you're either above the line or you're below the line. The only thing you have to communicate is what is above the line and what
Hmm.
is considered below the line. Um, so I chose the above the line concept or that strategy just because of its simplicity.
I love that concept. And I'd heard about that from my old administrator that I worked under, Danny Templin. He always said, and I stole it when I got into the principalship. about staying above the line. Every day I say, do your best, stay above the line, and be a leader. And I really didn't understand until you and I started talking where the root of that was. I hadn't read Urban Meyer's book. Not because I'm not a fan, it just wasn't one that showed up on my radar. But since talking with you, we've adopted that at our school. We're starting the above the line, below the line process. So, again, collaboration, man, it's amazing what you can get through a little bit of collaboration, right?
That's exactly right.
Line out for the people who aren't familiar with it. What is above the line and below the line behavior? I mean, if you're talking to a staff member, how do you define that?
Sure. When I rolled this out to my staff and I introduced this model or concept to my staff, and said this is, something I want to implement school wide, and I want to make sure that everybody here is on board and clearly understands what above the line, below the line means. We were in a faculty meeting, and I pulled up slides, in a presentation, and the first slide was above the line. This is what above the line means for us in our school, because I'm trying to make everything fit us at our school.
Right.
For us, above the line behaviors are intentional, they're professional, they're skillful, and it's anything that's going above and beyond.
Sure.
Anything, and those actions and those behaviors are considered above the line. And then the next slide rolled over to below the line behaviors. Below the line behaviors, to me as an administrator, are things that are kind of mindless, that you just don't put any thought to. There's no rhyme or reason why you do. It's just mindless, impulsive, unprofessional, minimal, or resistant type
Mhm.
behaviors. Though that's being below the line, uh, to me, and that's what I clearly communicated to my school. And I just told my teachers, in everything you do, in every aspect of you being a professional, because professionals are expected, as professionals I expect them to be above the line, you know
Absolutely.
and that means I wanted them to be above the line in lesson planning, teaching, talking to parents, coaching, organizing fundraisers, events, whatever it may be. I want to make sure that we approach everything, and that we're above the line when we do.
Sure. And let's be clear, the line is the bare minimum. This is that's if you think about it, this the bare minimum of what we expect. I want you to be that much better than what we've stated that is. And when you're dealing with 30 or 40 staff, you've got what, about 50 staff members in your school?
I do.
I mean, total. So that's hard to keep it reins on. There's always going to be somebody that's going to be falling below the line. Um, so that how do you how do you keep tabs on that?
Uh, by staying out of my office, being out about,
Hmm.
moving around, being in classrooms, talking to teachers, talking to kids, talking to parents, being at events, you can really tell, when I enter a classroom, you see the above the line preparation that goes into a lesson. You see the above the line, from the passion and energy that's being put into the instruction classroom. Um, it's not hard to see, and here's the thing, man. I have an excellent staff. That my faculty and staff, they are awesome. You know, they bought in, they completely understand, and they want to do what's right for kids. So when I go into a classroom, I don't ever have to look for, okay, what's this person doing wrong that I can talk to them about. You know, that's
Sure.
never my first thought. When I go into a classroom, a lot of what I see is above the line, behaviors and actions. So I'm really focused on what they're doing right, and it's like, what can I, um, reinforce, because they're doing a great job. They've really bought
Right.
in. They do a good job.
All right. So you're talking about going into classrooms. You're
Mhm.
looking for, you understand the expectations are there. Now you're talking about coaching up the positives. You're it's less of a punitive evaluation.
Mhm.
It's more of a how can we improve instruction, which that's a huge step forward right there. A lot of times, in Tennessee, we have the team evaluation. There's Tiger and other ones. You know, people take it from a punitive standpoint. You and I both, we've talked about this. It's kind of, we flipped the script, and I want it to be more of a coaching conversation. And I think that's kind of where you're too.
Yeah, the thing about this model, the above the line, below the line concept, and not just with instruction, just anything, just day to day,
Hmm.
going through the school hallways, interacting with teachers, faculty meetings, events, things like that. This model provides me an opportunity to recognize teachers for being above the line. When I see them being above the line, I see them going the extra mile, and I know they're professional, they're intentional, they're skillful, they're going above and beyond. It provides an opportunity for me to recognize them for those types of behaviors. On the flip side of that, it does provide some guidance, but sometimes we, as administrators, we have to have those crucial conversations. And when you've got a clear model in place, real simple model, like above the line or below the line,
Hmm.
when a teacher is um, maybe being a little unprofessional or they're resistant, maybe they do something that's impulsive that they should have put a little more thought into. Um, it does create some guidelines and give you grounds to address that situation with that teacher. Yeah,
Well,
it
and I
helps that
think,
conversation.
sure. And I think the fact that we started out with establishing a clear expectation, now that you've established a language in your school to have those conversations, you can say, "Here's above the line. We expect you to be mindful. I expect you to be professional, skillful." That's those are common languages now. So when you have those conversations, you shouldn't have to explain it to a teacher who's been there for 2 or 3 years. Um, it makes them a little quicker and probably a little less painful when you have to do them.
Yeah, and really not as long because you don't have to sit
Sure.
down and just break down. Hey, and have this long drawn out conversation. You can just kind of pull them to the side and say, hey, listen, I noticed this. Think about our model, our expectations. We always want to be above the line. Is there something?
Hmm.
Could you done that in a different way to make sure you stayed above the line? And if they come at you and say, yeah, I could have did, this or this, then you're like, all right, we're good to go. I appreciate it. And you
Right.
move on. You don't dwell on it. You move on. Sometimes you just got to point those little things out.
Well, it's like, we're steering a ship here. You got to, you're always using that rudder to steer that ship, and your language and your expectations, the rudder. And I think that's a perfect example of what you just said about pulling them to the sides. A lot of times you don't have to adjust major. You just have to say, hey, here's what we expect. Let's not do that. How can we do that differently? And
Sure.
instead of, I've worked with people, they would write those reprimands, and they wanted to document everything. It's like, documentation's great. Don't get me wrong. It's important legally, but for minor things, short conversations about expectation. And if it doesn't adjust, you can go on down the road. But I think your model gets that right where it needs to be. It gets you in a position where you can make those slight adjustments.
Sure, and this kind of leads into the direction I kind of want to take this conversation. When introducing this to my teachers and this above the line, below the line concept, they also understand that I'm implementing this school wide, so it's not just for
Mm.
teachers; it's for
Right.
students as well. And we'll get into that here in a minute, how we communicate that to the students. Um, but my teachers know that I have the same model expectation model or strategy for the whole school, whether you're a teacher or a student. And if we're going to hold our students accountable to being above the line, then my teachers definitely know that they have to be above the line, and they do a really
Right.
good job. They do a really good job with that.
And that's a tough one sometimes. I'll brag on my teachers. We've gotten there. I really think that we're to that point. But I have had to have that conversation with teachers. Specifically, a lot of times comes up with student work. You know, they seem to it's that one child that doesn't turn their work in, and they want to throw them under the bus. I'm like, well, you haven't gotten your lesson plans in on time in the in the last couple of weeks. How can we expect more from a 10-year-old than we expect from a professional 40-year-old?
Mhm.
and it was eye opening for them. Um, but those are those expectations that trickle all the way down. Sometimes we forget we're dealing with kids. They're not young adults, no matter what people think. They're not,
Right.
and we have to adjust our expectations and can't expect more from our students than we expect from ourselves as administrators or teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the beauty of the model. It's simple. You put it out there. We've got graphics of this model up in the teachers' lounge, and for teachers to see, in the hallway for kids to see. It's clearly communicated. Um, and we just expect everybody to be above the line. We expect our teachers to be professional, and be intentional, and to go the extra mile. And any time that someone is being impulsive, or they're resistant or unprofessional, you just have to point those things out, and you do it in a loving way. You don't have to do it in a punitive way, but
Mhm.
you just kind of point it out, you talk about it, and you work it out, and you move on, because that's what I
Well,
expect them to do with students.
sure, sure. We're the model for our teachers.
Yeah.
Again, expectations should be clear. If I can't live up to the expectations myself, how can I expect my staff to? But I want to go back to something you just said, because I'm really interested in this. Starting this process with my own school,
Hmm.
you've rolled it out to the staff, and you're
Yes.
talking about the visuals. Tell me about how you're rolling it out to those kids. How do you, because it's different. They're a kindergartner understanding above the line, a fifth grader understanding above or below the line. Tell me how you got that out there.
It is different, and you know as well as I do, because you're getting ready to go through the same changes that I am. I'm getting ready to become a K-5 school. I've been a K-8 school. We're getting ready to be a K-5 school. We've got some rezoning going on in our district, so we're getting a lot of new kids. I got several new kids last year, getting more new kids this coming year, and we're excited, man. We're so pumped, and we're excited to get them. But we also know that bringing in these new kids and this big shift and change for our school, that we have to go back and clearly communicate our expectations, and this above the line, below the line model to our students, because this model for us, it guides our PBIS system for our students, our positive behavior intervention system. Um, so one thing we're going to do, instead of talking about what I have done in the past, I want to talk about what I'm going to do this coming year, at the beginning of the year, when we start this new year, and we've got this new kind of, change and environment here at Camp Creek Elementary School. We're going to discuss, every homeroom teacher will discuss, above the line, below the line concept with their students in the class. Instead of having one big assembly, it's like you said, kindergartners, it's going to look different in kindergarten than it will in fifth grade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll leave that up to the homeroom teachers to discuss, to communicate that, and to teach those students what above the line, below the line means. Um, we'll post signs around the school, because above the line, below the line can not just tie into the classroom, but you've got above the line, below the line behaviors for your classroom, your gym, your school bus, your cafeteria, your hallways, your restrooms, all areas of school. We have expectations for our students. So, we're going to put signs in those different areas of school that clearly communicate. It's more like a graphic. It's not like a paragraph. It's a graphic with a line, and then above the line in green will have the positive behaviors. This is how you can be above the line in the hallway. This is how you can be above the line on the school bus. And then below in red, we're going to have, these are not acceptable. These are below the line behaviors. And we don't want to really focus on those, but we do want kids to realize that we want them to see that, hey, what I'm doing right now is below the line.
Sure.
What this is what I need to do. I need to do some of these green options up here to be above the line. So we graphics like that to go all around the school. This summer, my teachers have already, several of them have come to me and pitched the idea. They're wanting to shoot videos that model the above the line and below the line behaviors in those different areas of school. And we're going to share those with kids, when we come back to school. So when those teachers are talking about above the line and below the line concept in the classroom with their kids, they've got videos that they can pull up. And the kids are going to love to see their teachers acting out these videos,
Sure. Yeah.
to support what we're teaching them. And then they're going to talk about how with our PBIS system, you get rewarded for above the line actions and behaviors. So that's kind of our plan to communicate that when we come back.
Well, get into the positive behavior intervention that you were talking about. You don't want to focus on the negative behaviors too much. So the students are above the line. They're doing this. How are you rewarding those students? Tell me a little bit about that, because that's something we haven't done a whole lot at my school. Unfortunately, we tried it a couple of years ago with the house system. I just
Yeah.
found the house system, it didn't work for my school's design. The kindergartners and the eighth graders all in the same houses and things like that. Who's doing what? It just didn't work very well. So tell me about that reward system.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we're getting ready to shift, and I think we're getting ready to actually shift back to a house system. But I,
Okay.
but I'll tell you a little bit about it and how we got there. For the last couple of years, we've used a program, PBIS Rewards. It's an online program. Everything we do here, as far as PBIS and student rewards and things like that, and recognizing students, we want it to be simple. We don't want it to take away from instruction time. We want it to be easy and simple because that's the only way you're going to get teachers to buy in and actually take the time to, do these programs. So we use PBIS Rewards, which is an online digital um, PBIS program in which, kids, when a teacher catches them doing something good, they can give them a bear buck by, they can take a phone and scan. They've got a badge with a barcode, or they can just write it down and go to their desktop after class and award kids their points. But it keeps up with it digitally, like an online banking system.
Sure.
And
Okay.
and then every 9 weeks, we let kids come to a school store and they spend their bear bucks. We get everything from T-shirts to water bottles to sunglasses, lanyards, all kinds of school items, candy, snow cones. They can use bear bucks to pay their way into events like movies and things like that.
Hmm.
So that's what we've used the last couple of years, and it's a really good program. It's worked out really good. But with us shifting to from a K-8 to a K-5 school, one reason we got away from a was because a lot of times the K-5 kids would really buy into it. But your sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, that might have been a little too kiddie for them. It was hard
Hmm.
to get them to buy into that house system as much. So we're thinking as we're making this shift back to a K-5 school, we're wanting to design and implement a house system that fits us. And we've put some feelers out there and talked to kids and our faculty and staff meetings and things like that. We really feel like we can make it work, here again at Camp Creek Elementary School, just to kind of use that camaraderie and friendly competition, that competition to drive students to work a little harder and and to be more successful.
Sure. And I don't dislike the house system. It didn't work for me. And I'm not against going back to it. Maybe it's something we consider with my staff. But it's one of those things of I like the competition within it. Like you said, those middle schoolers trying to make it accessible for young elementary and middle schoolers. It's almost impossible. And if somebody proved me wrong, I mean, I'd like to know how to do it. Thankfully, it'll be a little easier next year if we choose to do that. But so the PBIS, when you that's a program that you're using. It's online. How are you funding? Because I'm big on money. I'm cheap. I got short arms and deep pockets, buddy. Um, how are you funding that Bear Store? How are you funding the PBIS program? Is that title money? Is that coming from PTO? Where's that coming from?
Donations and our booster club.
Okay.
They
Okay.
helped fund that. We had some donations that we were did some checking. We were able to use that since the PBIS benefited the whole school and every child was
Mm.
involved. We were able to use that money to purchase that online program for the last 2 years. And that's honestly that's another reason we're looking at going to a house system because we kind of decided we really don't want to keep purchasing that program if we don't have to.
Mm.
We can design a house system, within our school, come up with something that really fits us, and not have the expense of having to pay a program to keep up with all that for you.
Well, and we've, at our school, we've used class dojos, a
Hmm.
similar type project or a similar type system. And I haven't used PBIS, but to me, you know, I wonder, and this may be a question for somebody who's more into the title funds. If you if you line that out as part of your RTI squared B,
Hmm.
which is the behavioral side of RTI squared, I wonder if you couldn't fund that through federal funds.
I don't know. I'll be
I mean,
honest with you. I'm really not sure. I've never went that route with it, but we definitely know the person to talk to.
oh yeah, well, maybe that's a question we ask Chris later on, right? But I'm just thinking, if where can we support those kids if I can write a goal for my student behavior and that's in your school improvement plan, uh, I could I don't see why we couldn't do that. If you can buy books on behavior and then you can buy things for guidance counselors through title funds, why couldn't we buy the program to support that? Um, whether or not you choose to move away from it or not. But so talk to me a little bit about some of the positives and negatives. You've kind of told me how you're going to adjust for next year. You've got your expectations. What are some of the if an administrator is moving in the direction you're talking about?
Hmm.
What advice would you give them?
Well, we've said multiple times in multiple blogs and in several of our podcasts, what you've got to choose something that fits you. You've got to find
Hmm.
a model or a strategy to communicate expectations that fits your school. Something that your faculty and staff can easily understand, can easily buy into. Keep it simple. Communicate it early. Communicate it often.
Hmm.
If it's something that you can put graphics up, like our above the line, below the line signs, that concept, put the graphics out there. Take the time to make those, order those, whatever you need to do. Get those up on the wall in different areas of the school so people clearly are constantly and clearly reminded of your expectations. That would be my greatest advice there.
And I might add one little thing. I think buy-in from your staff is
Sure.
probably the foundation for this. Um, I, having done the house system and things like that in the past, not to dwell on that, I don't think I had 100% buy-in from some of my staff at that time. Things have changed, but at that time, we weren't ready for it,
Hmm.
and without that buy-in, we rolled it out, and we were almost destined to fail.
Yeah, and here's something to think about, Chris. And I don't know, I wasn't there, at your school at that time. I know what my school was like at that time. They had a house system, and it just didn't fit them, and the teachers
Mhm.
wanted to get away from it because it took away from instruction. They felt, and it didn't fit the school.
Sure.
For somebody that comes to me and talks about buy-in and the house system, failing, and or whatever system you're using failing,
Right.
that may relate back to expectations. Maybe the teachers didn't
Mhm.
know the clearly understand their expectations for supporting that program. So, like when I
Sure.
roll out this new house program, I'm going to have clear expectations. How can I tie into the above the line concept to supporting and running this house system?
Right. Well, and in one of my blogs, I uh, I refer to finish lines. We talk about finish lines, and I think that's when you're talking about those clear expectations. We have to establish what our finish line is. When I'm running or I'm riding, I always have my goal, and it's not always winning the race. It's maybe it's finishing the race, or getting healthy may be your finish line, or running a 2-hour marathon may be your finish line. Having that clear expectation in your mind and getting that across to your staff, I think that's fundamental. So we're definitely on the same page in terms of expectation, just probably using a little bit different verbiage. Um,
Hmm.
but that's
And like I
okay.
said, you got to use what fits you and
Sure.
what you feel your staff will understand and buy into.
And I think being able to adjust as you need to with those expectations, because new things do come. Just like you're talking about,
Sure.
you're getting new students. I got new students last year from rezoning, and
Mhm.
that was tough. We had to adjust our expectations a little bit and kind of back up a little bit to reestablish, you know, re-educate the students, these new students, on what the expectations are. And you're going to go through the same thing this coming year.
Yes.
Um, you know, I'm a little different. I won't be getting new students. We've already got ours, but that's one problem we've had.
Yeah,
Making
and
sure it's clear.
that's one thing we discussed, getting into on our move up day. Our district
Hmm.
setting, if we end up coming back to school through this pandemic, we've got a day set aside to where those students that are coming to me next year, they're going to go ahead and bus them over here one day for about half a day, and let them spend the day with us. And that's one area we had, talking to kids. Hey, we're excited to meet you. We're looking forward to you being here. We can't wait for you to be a Camp Creek Bear next year. Here's what it means to be a Camp Creek Bear, and then get into
Hmm.
the above the line concept, and kind of introduce it to them that way. And then when they come back, in the fall at the beginning of the year, you do that school wide educate.
Sure.
Have your
Yeah.
homeroom teachers educate them, clearly communicate the expectations for the students. Um, Show them the model videos. So you educate them, you model your expectations, and then you just start holding them accountable through your PBIS system, whatever you're using. You start
Hmm. Hmm.
focus on the positive over the punitive, and start rewarding those above the line behaviors. And then kids see that going on, and they're like, wait a minute, especially K-5 kids. They're
Hmm.
like, hey,
Hmm.
I want to be recognized. I want to be rewarded. So instead of focusing on how they can get in trouble, they start focusing on how they can get recognized and rewarded, just like, another student did 2 or 3 minutes ago.
Well, I mean, this goes back to the Skinner idea of positive versus negative consequences. I mean, this is not what we're discussing is not new under the sun, but it just looks different.
Sure.
Uh, one one thing I did want to ask, we're talking about all these students coming in. Give the people at home a rough number so they understand the percentage that's going to impact your school. You're losing six, seven, and eight, so that's probably what 100
I'm losing
150.
about, yeah, I'll be losing about 120 kids.
Hmm.
I'm guessing here. I don't know the
Yeah.
exact number. I'd have to go back and
Well,
pull the
these are rough. Yeah,
current
rough
polls.
numbers.
Probably going to lose between 100 and 120 kids, and I'm probably going to gain around 100 kids,
Okay.
100 to
S-
115.
So in a school of about 320, you're talking one third of your school is
Hmm.
going to be new Camp Creek Bears. So that's a major task, and you're going to see there's going to be a cultural problem, not a problem, but
The
an
shift.
issue that you've already a shift. That good way of
Hmm.
putting it. That you've already got plans to address, which is any smart administrator. I hope if you're going through the same thing, I hope you're doing what Dennis is doing. Um, my shift was we only gained about 30 kids when we had it. The school that closed was small, and we only got a small portion of them. But in those 30 kids, we did have some issues, some major issues, and we had to back up and reestablish what our expectations are. So, kudos to you, man. You're ahead of the game, right? You're above the line to
Yeah,
still.
above the line. I'm trying to be a good model. Luckily, I have
You're
a
my
good
model.
faculty. Luckily, I have a good faculty and staff that keep me on my toes. They do a good job.
Yeah, well, we're both blessed with that. So, Dennis, anything else you want to add to this conversation on establishing the expectations in your school?
No, just going back to it. If you're realizing that maybe you need to go back and communicate clear expectations, or you're a new administrator and you want to put your clear expectations out there. Just going back to what we talked about earlier in the podcast, you know, choose a model or a strategy that fits your school.
Hmm.
Keep it simple. Clearly communicate it soon, and clearly communicate it often. You get some graphics to go up in different areas in the hallways, the teacher's lounge. You want that message, those expectations to be communicated often, because the more they're communicated, and the more clear they are when you have to address below the line behaviors, or those negative behaviors, your expectations are out there. You've got those to refer to, and it doesn't have to be a punitive conversation. It can just be, hey, I just want to talk to you for a second. Is there another way you think we might could have done this? And they say, yeah, Mr. Wiles, I probably should have done this. All right, well, you got this. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And you move on. Just keeping those expectations at the forefront. Because those expectations that tie into your school culture and they help drive your school culture.
Well said, my friend. Well, before we cut out, I do want to get to Dennis. I shared one last week. Give the people at home a little something to read while they're sitting at the house under quarantine. Hopefully, you're staying away from people 6 feet. Social distancing is a real thing. So,
That's right,
tell
man.
I'm trying my best. All right, tell us of a book. Give us a book to read, buddy.
I'm going to, man. I've got a good one here that I'm pretty excited to, share with everybody this week. I'm trying to get the title of it pulled up here. It's this book's called Next Level Teaching by Jonathan Alsheimer. He is a rock star teacher. This book is it's a book written by a teacher for teachers. In this book, Jonathan shares strategies, wisdom, encouragement to build engagement and improve the culture not only in his classroom but in his whole school. After reading the first 2 chapters, I already decided this is a must read for my entire faculty and staff. If you've not read it, I encourage you to order it today on Amazon. I rank it right up there, honestly, with Relentless. Move Your Bus, Kids Deserve It. It's that kind of book. It can be a game changer for a teacher. I've already had a teacher that read it here at my school, come to me, talk to me about it, and I could already see how the content in that book had changed his disposition, and his outlook on teaching in the upcoming year. So I highly recommend this book.
Wow.
It's
a definitely a must buy.
Dennis, thank you so much for having a conversation today, buddy. It's always good to see you. Hope everybody at your house staying healthy. Keep the distance. Don't get the corona.
That's right. Same to you, buddy.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for listening today. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't liked or subscribed, we're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, we will be on Spotify in the next couple of days. So please, if you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so. Chris Sharp, stay sharp.
Wilds out.
All right. Have a good day, buddy.